Welcome into the CBS Sports Network for this very special episode of an NBA mock draft show. And Sam Quinn, thank you so much for joining us. CBS Sports, my favorite CBS Sports NBA expert, because he knows absolutely everything about what's going down. And on this episode, we're going to do it a little differently. My mock has been out now for 48 hours. I've been on CBS Sports HQ talking about it, but with Sam here, we can really get into some of the nuance of what each team is doing from a cap perspective, from a roster construction perspective, and then I will share not just where I have those teams making their picks, but also who else might be in consideration. So Sam, we're going to get this thing started right off the bat. The Washington Wizards won the lottery on Sunday night, but could you give us a little bit of context about what kind of the state of the Wizards rebuild?
Yeah, they'd been tanking for 3 years. I think they only won 50 games in that 3-year span. Traded for Trae Young and Anthony Davis at the deadline. There'd been some buzz. Maybe they're going to try to flip Anthony Davis. I think the lottery makes it a little bit likelier having a high floor with those two veteran stars. Not as important anymore because you can sell the future now. You can sell a ceiling. So they are pretty loaded at the wing, with Will Riley and Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly. They've drafted a lot of guys in that range. Trey Johnson, number 6 as well last year. But there's nobody on that core right now besides, I think, Alex Sarr, you can say, okay, we feel like we have a potential all-star. Now at number 1, you're going to get that guy.
Well, not only an all-star, but I would say what they haven't had in recent years is someone who projects as an offensive alpha. And certainly in this draft in particular, that's what the expectation is. I think, listen, there is some speculation that Washington is considering different players. I have said on the record, if I were in that front office, I would bring in and work out and do complete due diligence on 4 different players: AJ Dybantsa, Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, and Caleb Wilson. But I do expect AJ Dybantsa to be the top pick. We're talking about a 6'9" wing, 7-foot wingspan, was the leading scorer in college basketball this year, has always been known for his ability to rise and fire in the mid-range area. But we saw a lot of growth this year, not just in terms of his rim pressure, his ability to draw fouls in more translatable ways because he played with more physicality, but started to see some progress in his decision-making as well, his ability to read the defense and make plays for others. The shooting, I think, is a question mark, but that's gradually been ticking up. My question for AJ is more on the defensive end, because he has a wealth of tools that should be translatable, but it has yet to be his focus. So I'm not ready to kind of anoint him a two-way impact player yet. I think he has extreme two-way potential, but I want to see him show more willingness to impact winning, and that's going to require a defensive commitment that we haven't seen yet. Sam, I guess my question for you would be, given the amount of young wings that Washington has drafted or acquired in recent years, is there some type of consolidation here, or do you just kind of let these guys all grow and gradually figure out who you want to stick with?
Yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to make a decision right now, but just purely from a minute standpoint, right? Like, you have Keyshawn George, who I presume is going to start. Will Riley was very promising down the stretch. Bilal Coulibaly, the upside's always been there, but he hasn't quite put it together on offense yet. Trey Johnson, I would presume, is going to go to the bench, but you do need that shooting. They have a lot of these guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're a team picking in the middle of the first round, or you have a future first round pick, you give them a call. Hey, I don't know what Bub Carrington's role is going to be on this team moving forward. If you can throw a pick their way, I would guess that they would consider that. So I don't know that there's going to be a consolidation in the sense that they're going to trade 2-3 of these guys in picks for more veterans. They made those moves already with Trae Young and Anthony Davis, but I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 of those guys did get picked off by somebody that really liked them. I think George and Riley, and I guess Johnson as well, just given how highly he was drafted last year, are the safer ones. Coulibaly going into his rookie extension eligibility offseason, and Bub Carrington, just given how much further down the pecking order that he's now fallen, are the 2 that I would say are probably the most available.
Interesting stuff. All right, number 2 is the Utah Jazz. So let me just say this. I thought Austin Ainge played this perfectly. Granted, you had to get a little lucky, but he made a big trade. He got Jaren Jackson in. He maintained his pick. He got lucky with the ping pong balls. And now they too have a chance to get an immediate impact player. I have them going with Darren Peterson here. But I do think, A, this is complicated, and B, this is going to be a process. It's complicated because of AJ Dybantsa's ties to Utah, right? He played at BYU. His family's there. I was told yesterday his mom and sister are going to remain in Utah. Cameron Boozer's dad, Carlos Boozer, is a scout for Utah. So there's a lot of dynamics here. Darren Peterson obviously had a complicated season at Kansas. But what I have said time and time again is if you combine the shot making profile we saw this year with the Jayhawks, which was vastly better than we anticipated in high school, and you put that together with what we did see before Kansas, which is this big, physical, long guard who makes plays, who puts pressure on the rim, who has a real knack for getting fouled. You merge those two together, then you have someone who I think could have the highest pick and the highest upside in the draft. So my question for you, Sam, is how does this fit, given that you've made that trade and you have Keontae George coming off that breakout season in Utah?
I think if there's any team in the top four that's prepared to take the medical risk that Darren Peterson would come with after that freshman season at Kansas, it would be Utah, because they have a roster that even without this pick is probably ready to compete to win 48, 50 games, compete for a top six spot in the West with Jaren Jackson and Lauri Markkanen. What they really needed was that high upside guy, that guy who has a chance to be a franchise player, because Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson are like all-star level players, guys who could be in the top 30, top 20 players in the league. They didn't have that guy who could be all NBA first team, the sort of player you need to like actually make the leap into championship contention. Peterson seems like the highest upside player in this slot. Nominally, they have shooting guard open. I think there's a little bit of a logjam there where Keontae George is going to be the point guard. You have this big front court with Jaren Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, and with restricted free agency. I assume he's going to be back. Ace Bailey there as well. You kind of have 6 guys for 5 slots. That's going to be something you have to figure out over time, especially since they're going to get expensive. Jaren Jackson on a max, Lauri Markkanen on a max, Walker Kessler going to get paid very well. Keontae George, rookie extension eligible. So they are going to have to figure that out at some point. But Peterson's upside is just so considerable here, and they don't have anybody who profiles in that way with that kind of raw talent. I think he's going to be the pick at number 2.
I love the flexibility. I know optionality is the buzzword, but I love the flexibility it gives the front office too, because you're kind of now able to simultaneously play on 2 different timelines. You've got the Jaren Jackson, Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George. Hey, we're going to be in the playoffs right now. But you've also got these 2, I would say, pretty extreme long-term stocks in Darren Peterson and Ace Bailey. And you say, hey, if these 2 become what we think they're capable of becoming, and Utah took Ace Bailey last year, knowing that this was a little bit more of a long-term trajectory. We've got 2 guys who have legitimate star potential here. So we're going to develop them, but simultaneously, we're going to be competitive right now. And obviously that will really delight that fan base. Interesting pick at number 3 with Memphis. And so I wanted to, last week before the lottery came out, I had a segment on this show actually about who could break up the perceived big 3, the perceived big 3 of AJ Dybantsa, Darren Peterson, and Cameron Boozer. And my hypothesis then was I thought Memphis, a team that has a pristine recent draft history and also a history of being willing to kind of go against the grain, take Zach Edey at 9 when that was viewed as contrarian, move up to take Cedric Coward when that was viewed as very aggressive. Both has obviously worked out. Their evaluation of second-round talent, I think, is better than anyone in recent years. So my thought was that they could be someone that could come up and take Caleb Wilson. But I still haven't him take Cam Boozer because I just think he is their kind of guy. Give us some context on the roster rebuild right now in Memphis. And if there's a certain profile that front office may have a history of kind of being appealed by.
Yeah, so the Grizzlies have obviously been one of the best drafting teams in the NBA during this Zach Kleiman era, and one of the ways in which they've had all of this success is they've tended to draft the older, the safer prospects. Desmond Bane coming to mind at number 30, where he was an older prospect, and it didn't matter. He just came in right away and was awesome. So I look at Cam Boozer as this high floor guy, somebody who fits very, very well next to Zach Edey, given the shooting. The offensive rebounding, if you put those 2 guys together, is going to be spectacular. So I would assume that Boozer is the cleaner fit. But the Grizzlies, like you said, are not going to be beholden to conventional wisdom. They're not just going to take him because he's number 3 on most boards. If they look at Caleb Wilson and say, this is Giannis Antetokounmpo, this is a future superstar, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they just made the pick. Their roster is enough of a blank slate that I don't think you have to be beholden to fit if you don't want to be. Edey is secure, but he is also an injury risk. He barely played last year. He was spectacular when he was on the floor, but you just don't know how much you're going to get out of him, as far as a health perspective. Cedric Coward is the only other player there that I would say is firmly locked into a starting role moving forward. After that, it's a lot of questions. And if you have to go get more shooting to fit next to a Caleb Wilson, if you have to change up the dynamic in the backcourt, you can do that. I don't think Zach Kleiman is going to look at this and say, oh, we need to have a shooter next to Zach Edey. Oh, we need to have this. We need to have that. They're going to take whoever they think the best player is.
And Sam, let me ask you this. I know Ja Morant did not get moved at the deadline, but the expectation, I think, is still that his days in Memphis are limited. What is the sense around the league of what type of package Memphis could or would have to take in order to move off Morant once and for all?
It'll be minimal, but I do think it'll be positive value. I do think there was some concern around the deadline. Are they going to have to just dump the contract? Are they going to have to pay somebody to take it on? It's 2 years of max money, given his injury concerns, given how hard he is to fit on certain teams. That's not a contract that's viewed as especially desirable, but the way trades work is you only need one. You need one team to look at Ja Morant and say, we think we can bring back the all-NBA version of him. Am I especially optimistic about that? No, I just think when you're not getting to the rim at the rate that he was at his peak, I don't think his game really makes sense because he doesn't really defend. He doesn't really shoot. So he can't really be an off-ball player. The way I would look at a Ja Morant trade is that you can't get him thinking he's going to be the third best player on our team. You're taking a 10%, a 20% swing on getting an all-NBA player back with a huge bust potential on the other end of that deal. But since it's 2 years, if you're a team like the Kings, if you're a team like the Bucks, a team that's otherwise kind of hopeless, I think you talk yourself into that lottery ticket.
All right. Interesting enough. Well, we are going to keep doing this. We've got picks 4 through 6 coming up next. You're watching the CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Network, where we are going through my most recent mock drafts and also breaking down what NBA franchises are looking for with their particular status of roster construction. Sam Quinn is joining us from the CBS Sports NBA team. Sam, we're at number 4. That is the Chicago Bulls, and this is obviously based on AJ Dybantsa, Darren Peterson, and Cameron Boozer going 1 through 3. I have the Bulls going with Caleb Wilson, but let me be very clear. I think of those top 4, they will simply take whoever is on the board. I think the Bulls actually have the easiest pick of the draft. That's probably a statement that will come back to haunt me when one of these point guards blows up down the road. But Caleb Wilson is someone who exceeded all expectations this year at North Carolina. He's got size, he's got athleticism, he's got a motor, he's got this type of elasticity and bend that is really rare for a player his size. The big question is the offensive game and specifically his ability to space the floor. But I don't want to make too much of a draft video, but the highlights that they put out are very intriguing. And in just a couple hours, I'm going to be headed down to Wintrust Arena and see if those shooting mechanics have really changed. My question to you, the Bulls are a team now that is going to have a new front office, and their roster construction seems like it has a lot of young forwards and very few like guards. How do you think they approach trying to better balance out that roster? What's the first order of business for that new front office?
Talent acquisition. They're a blank slate. If you look at their roster, there's only one player on the team in Josh Giddey who's making more than $20 million next year. They can go in any direction. I don't think there's any mandate to rush this. I don't think they can look at this and say, oh, because we have Matas Buzelis, who's our best long-term prospect, we can't take another athletic forward. No, I think they're just going to take the best player and figure it out from there. And if it is Caleb Wilson, there are some fit issues there, right? There's not that much shooting on that team. They don't have a rim protector at center yet. They are going to be very fun to watch on the break, though, with Josh Giddey as a playmaker, Caleb Wilson and Buzelis, running the break with him. I think that's going to be a fun start for their team, and they'll figure out the fit from there. Like they have Patrick Williams, who they drafted high. That's one of the
Right.
worst contracts in the NBA. I don't view him as a long-term fit. They traded for Isaac Okoro under this, not mandate, but this strategy from the old front office where we have to trade our good, valuable players for former lottery picks. Didn't work out quite so well with Caruso and Giddey, or Okoro for Lonzo Ball. Though I guess Lonzo Ball had the injury issues in Cleveland, didn't work out. So they just like to acquire talent in the old front office. It didn't work out given the fit and just given that they didn't have anybody with a star ceiling. That's going to be the mandate here. Get a star ceiling. Get somebody that you look at who can be a future all-star. And that seems to be Caleb Wilson. It seems to be whoever lands out of the top 4 here.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think in some ways it's the easiest pick in the draft, and the harder context or the harder role is continuing to build around those pieces because there are young front court, like Noah Essengay was the pick last year. Leonard Miller's there. Like those are not, this GM is not incumbent to his predecessor's picks. So he won't have to worry too much about that. But still, it makes for an interesting narrative. The 5th pick is very interesting because the Clippers get the pick. The Pacers rolled the dice and it didn't go their way. Before we go too far into this, I want to give you a chance to, let's take it from this perspective first. The Clippers just traded for Darius Garland. We're at a spot in the middle of the lottery where there are 4 one-and-done point guards on the board here. I had them going with Keaton Wagler because for 2 reasons. One, I think there's an argument to be made that he is the highest long-term upside of the group. He is so far he's the earliest on his overall journey. He's still so young. Really came out of nowhere this year at Illinois. Should have had a major adjustment to an unprecedented level of competition and didn't. He's got size, he's got shooting, he's got skill, he's got feel, but he's a fairly limited athlete who's still kind of growing into his body. So my question to you is, with Darius Garland there, is this something where Sacramento has to say who fits with Garland, or did they simply take the guy who they think is the best long-term prospect?
Take the best long-term prospect. I mean, the Clippers just never have chances to draft this high. There are only 2 active players in the entire NBA who were drafted in the lottery by the Clippers and who actually played for the Clippers as rookies. Eric Gordon, who's active only in the loosest sense of the word, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, we know how that one went. So I think they're just going to take the best player. Given the appeal that Los Angeles has, I think the way the Clippers are looking at this is asset accumulation. And if we have to move one of these guys down the line, so be it. I don't know that they're looking at trading Keaton Wagler after a year, given the experience they had with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But there are a bunch of other roster considerations to bring up here. I mean, number one, they don't have that many future picks. They traded all of those picks first for Paul George and then for James Harden. I wonder if they would be a possible trade down team if somebody in that 7, 8, 9 range really loves one of these guards and wants to jump up. I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers wanted to get some extra assets. And that's even on top of the Kawhi Leonard investigation. If they were to lose picks in that investigation, getting some back would probably be helpful. So I do think they are just thinking, how can we maximize this pick as an asset? It's going to be less about fit and more about, can we bring in somebody that really helps us, somebody who gives us some long-term upside. Something else to keep in mind, though, is they do have Kawhi Leonard here. There are a lot of trade rumors going around. The Heat at number 13, the Warriors at number 11. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if the Clippers wound up with another lottery pick in this draft.
Let me ask you this, and this is not something that I've heard whispered about, but what if they say, like, hey, we think Darius Acuff is the guy? Darius Acuff, I'm going to say this, Darius Acuff and Darius Garland, they do not fit together. I mean, that's a defensive disaster waiting to happen, and I think you're so vulnerable on that end of the floor, you can't play those 2 guys together. Is there a world in which they say, Acuff is our guy, let's see what the market is for Garland? Is that possible?
I think that's feasible. The issue that you're going to run into, though, and thankfully Garland played very, very well for them after they got him at the deadline. The issue you're going to run into is that small guards have less trade value than they've ever had in the NBA. We just saw this with Trae Young, right? Getting traded basically in a cap dump at the deadline. Ja Morant going through a similar version of this. I would be much more optimistic about Darius Garland than I would either of those 2 players. But he just got traded for a 36-year-old in James Harden. I don't know how much value you're going to find on the market for Darius Garland. maybe the circumstances have changed where I look at the Nets at 6 and the Kings at 7. Both of them hoped for much better lottery luck and don't really have foundations. Maybe they would look at Garland and say, hey, this is an all-star who's relatively young. Let's bring him in. He can be somebody that we build around. I think a market would ultimately exist. It just wouldn't be at the star price that you'd hope for.
That would be fascinating because right now I've got the Clippers at 5 taking Wagler and pairing him with Garland because I think those two could fit together. At 6 with Brooklyn, I have them taking Acuff, which I think makes sense because they had 4 first-round draft picks last year, and I don't think they got anyone there who's got the potential to develop into an offensive alpha. Acuff can and arguably is capable of playing that role right away, at least to a certain extent. So I think he makes an overwhelming amount of sense for Brooklyn. But it's an interesting scenario if you say, hey, what if the Clippers just say Acuff is our guy? We want to take him. Could they move both Garland and the pick? And then potentially you have that scenario in Brooklyn. Real interesting stuff. Let's talk about Brooklyn. There was a lot made of the 2025 draft. Just said they took 4 picks. Doesn't look like any of them are star potential players, although they're all ideally solid pieces. Where are they at in their rebuild right now?
It's very tricky because they paid such a premium to jump or to get their picks back in 25 and 26, and both of those picks fell by a combined 5 slots. So yeah, they thought they were getting Cooper Flagg and Darren Peterson out of these drafts. They wind up getting Igor Gemin and now maybe Acuff, maybe Wagler, one of these other guards. I do think they're just going to take best player available ultimately because they're so desperate for star power. But look at those guys that they picked last year. A lot of them are guards. A lot of them need the ball in their hands.
Yeah.
So the fit is going to be a little bit tricky. They have a bunch of cap space. I wouldn't be surprised either to see if they said, you know what? This draft and develop thing didn't quite work out for us. We didn't get that top pick that could be a franchise player. Do we maybe try to accelerate a little bit? I'm looking at Cleveland. If the Cavaliers don't make it through the second round against the Pistons, is Donovan Mitchell going to be happy to stay there? He's a free agent in 2027. He expressed interest in being in New York in the past. The Knicks are off the table at this moment. Maybe that's a way they go. Would they try to get into the mix for Giannis? I don't know that they have enough right now to appeal to him, but I do think if they could get 2 stars and they have the pick volume to potentially do that, that might change things. My question for Acuff: what is his premium A+ skill? When I look at small guards around the league, the guys who don't have that tend to, end up like Colin Sexton, where they're good players, but they don't have that one single thing they can hang their hat on. The guys who become stars, it's Damian Lillard with the pull-up shooting. It's Kyrie Irving with the balance, or Jalen Brunson with the decel. What is the one thing that Darius Acuff does that's going to make him a superstar?
That's a fair question to which I don't have an answer from like a bag. I can't say like, oh, it's his step back. What I can tell you is he has this natural alpha and charisma about him, which resonates no matter where he is. So you put him at IMG and he's the guy. You put him at USA Basketball, he's the guy. You put him at Arkansas, where everybody was saying like, no, he's overrated coming out of high school. No, he was the guy. And he might have to evolve a little bit, but I think first of all, you mentioned balance. I think for Kyrie, it's a different type of balance, but his balance is elite, and he has that extra quality about his personality, which was kind of the reason I banked on him out of high school, and the reason I still am now. But I'm more concerned about like, can we at least get to the point where you're a defensive neutral? You know what I mean? Just in case you're not all of Stephon Marbury. Like, can we get to the point where if you're just, if you are Colin Sexton offensively, or maybe you're Deron Williams, where at least you're a neutral defender? Because to your point, those undersized guards right now have never been less valuable in the NBA, especially when they don't defend. So there is certainly a trap in this Darius Acuff projection. It's why I think his stock is a little trickier than some suggest, but we will see. All right, Sam and I are coming right back. We're going to break down picks 7 through 10. That's coming up next, right here on the CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Network, where we are breaking down my latest mock draft and talking about some different scenarios. Sam Quinn joins the show. Sam, we are on pick number 7, and that means the Sacramento Kings. So, right off the bat, Sam, tough question here. This is not a softball. Summarize the state of the rebuilding plan in Sacramento for us.
It's not going great. I mean, they tried to win last year. It's impressive given the state of tanking in the NBA that they were near the bottom of the league in a year in which everyone was trying to lose and they were trying to win. This roster is somehow above the luxury tax for next year, despite being one of the worst teams in the NBA. The only player on the team that I would look at and say, I feel comfortable he's a long-term starter would be Keegan Murray. They had some nice rookies last year, Maxime Reynaud, Neat Clifford, some guys that might have some upside. But right now, it's bleak. They're probably going to look in trading Domantas Sabonis again. They looked at the deadline. Nothing came up. Maybe Zach LaVine, but I don't think anybody's going to be interested in taking on that $48 million contract. They've tried and failed to move Malik Monk for a year. DeMar DeRozan has a partial guarantee. He's making $25 million. I think around 10 of it is guaranteed. So a lot of those veterans, I would imagine, are going to be out the door, whether it's now or in a year. They just need building blocks. It's that simple. I don't think there's any sacred cows on this team. Just get the best player, figure out the fit later.
You just named 4 players who they're trying to move on successfully, and that was the rest of their starting lineup, if I'm not mistaken. You said Sabonis, DeRozan, LaVine, and Monk. I look at this roster, and I think if there's a silver lining, it's the fact that the glaring hole on this roster right now is at the point guard position. I don't consider Malik Monk to be a point guard. I think, let's call him a combo. But and there's a bunch, 4 different one-and-done freshmen who are in the mix here. We've got Wagler and Darius Acuff already off the board in this mock scenario. So I went Kingston Flemings. Now, Kingston Flemings did not have great measurements yesterday in Chicago. I'm in Chicago for the NBA Draft Combine. He was not especially big and had smaller arms, but he also is a big-time athlete. He's a high-rising leaper. He's got great pace, and whatever lack of size people are concerned about, I don't know that impacted his floor game, at least so far at Houston. He has a very high release on his pull-up shot that he goes to, maybe even more so than NBA teams are going to like. I think he's probably the most talented defensive prospect in this group. He too has a little natural alpha to him. The biggest swing skill for me is his shooting. If the shooting holds up, I think he's got a good chance to be an NBA starting point guard. And at Sacramento, you're in a situation where I think they just give him the ball and they let him go through those growing pains and play through it. Unless you think they're still playing for the playoffs. But if it's me, I'm giving Kingston Flemings the ball. I'm saying, let's see if the shooting is real, and let's see if you're a point guard of the future. Let's find out.
Yeah, and I think if they do keep Sabonis, they do keep Sabonis, he's kind of the perfect training wheels for a guard like that because he's one of the best screeners in the NBA and he's such a good passer. If you give him the pocket passes, that's going to open some stuff up for you. So we'll see what the roster looks like, but I do think that is a good fit.
Okay, that makes sense. Similar situation in Atlanta, whereas, what is similar is that they too have a little bit of a void at the point guard position after moving Trae Young, because I view, and please correct me if I'm wrong with this, I view Nickeil Alexander-Walker as someone who can play on or off the ball. Would you co-sign that, or do you think he has to have the ball in his hands?
I think he can play off the ball. I think the statistical jump this year was much bigger, on paper, than it was in terms he was a better creator this year, but he wasn't a primary creator. Most of the jump just came from making a ton of spot up shots. So I'm looking at him as a shooting guard moving forward.
So I've got them taking Michael Brown here. And listen, there are some Trae Young similarities there, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Atlanta fans, but I view him as the most naturally skilled of these 4 freshman point guards. He was a late bloomer who was about, I think, 5'6" as a high school freshman and who grew 8+ inches. I think he was at 6'3" and change without shoes on yesterday. So he's now got pretty decent size for the point guard position. His frame is still evolving. When you're a late bloomer like that and your frame is just continuing to stretch, you're not going to fill out as soon as most. So he's got to build up his body. He's got to, see if he can hold up defensively, see if he can hold up physically. But that 34% 3-point shot, he a better shooter than that, guaranteed. That was a reflection of the type of shots he was taking at Louisville. He's got great floor vision. There's not much he can't do with the ball in his hands. So I look at this Atlanta team that I think has a lot of quality young assets in the middle of the lineup and think this could be a good long-term fit, especially if he can kind of buy into defending at a level that is consistent with some of the other guys in that roster. But shape the total picture for me in Atlanta and how someone of that archetype might fit.
Yeah, I think the Trae Young comparisons are interesting because they've changed their playing style so much in a way that was just diametrically opposed to the way that Trae Young wanted to play. Trae Young wants to run 50 pick and rolls every game. That's not the way the Hawks are playing anymore. It's a lot faster, it's a lot more transition, and it's a lot more ball movement. If he can fit into that, I think this can be a fit. Defensively, they have way more wings now than they ever had when Trae Young was the franchise player, right? Dyson Daniels, one of the best defenders in the NBA. Jalen Johnson took a step back defensively last year, but I'm not overly concerned about that just because his usage rose so much that does tend to happen. It happened to Denny Avdia as well. They have so much athleticism and so much size on the wing. If you are going to add a guard who's a little bit weaker defensively, they're better equipped to weather that now than they would have been in the past. CJ McCollum, not a great defender, but he was the only guy who was getting the buckets against the Knicks. You need somebody to fill in that slot, ideally somebody who has higher upside long-term than McCollum, or at least that McCollum was at 34. I came into this lottery hoping that they would get Darren Peterson. Oh, that would have been the perfect fit. Alas, that's not.
That would have been better.
I will say they do have next year another pick from the Pelicans and the Bucks. It's the lesser of those two picks, provided they don't both go in the top 4. If the Hawks want to trade up, if they have a specific guard that they want to target, whether it's Wagler or Acuff or somebody else, they do have the ammunition to go up and get that player. But if it's Brown, I do think this is a really good environment for him to be joining. I think Quinn Snyder has built something that's far less dependent on a single shot creator than what they had with Trae Young.
Okay, that is interesting. You're making me think on that one. All right, let's go to Dallas at 9. Obviously, Masai Ujiri is there now. Mike Schmitz is there now. They are building around Cooper Flagg. I've got them going with Braden Burries. I mean, this is a strong, physical, two-way guard. He defends. He gets downhill. He makes open shots. He's got great intangibles. I think kind of what you see is what you get. It seems like he could fit in right there from day one, especially if Kyrie Irving comes back. You slide Braden Burries at the 2. But give us some perspective on just like the overall state of the roster construction in this kind of next iteration of the Dallas Mavericks around Cooper Flagg. What is it that you think Masai Ujiri and Mike Schmitz will prioritize in this rebuild?
So they made an interesting choice at the trade deadline in what they prioritized in an Anthony Davis trade. They didn't really get great assets back. One of the picks they got, I believe, is number 30, and another is a top 20 protected pick from the Warriors that's unlikely to convey just based on the math. They didn't get great assets, but they really cleaned up their books. And with Cooper Flagg on a rookie deal, you're going to have the cap flexibility in the next few years to go out and target whatever you need on the veteran side to make up for the fact that they don't really have many draft picks. They have this pick at number 9, but their picks in 27, 28, 29, and 30 are all owed out from trades that you made during the Luka Doncic era trying to build around him. So bringing in somebody like Burries makes sense as sort of an all-around player. They have a lot of those bigger defensive wings. If you slot Burries in there as well, like maybe you can try to build something somewhat similar. I mean, with less talent and less asset flexibility than the Thunder had, but something similar as far as a team that has defenders at every position. If you draft Burries, I like that. That is where Masai Ujiri has tended to lean. His best draft picks in Toronto, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, they were all wings. I know Burries is smaller than that, but he does tend to target guys who can defend. So I would think Burries does make more sense than some of these guards like Brown and Acuff, who are defensive vulnerabilities. And having Flagg, who looks like, we knew he was going to be a good defensive prospect when he got drafted. I don't think anybody saw what he was going to be offensively this soon. I don't know that they need to draft a shot creator at number 9. I think they can look at Cooper Flagg and say, we're going to build an offense around you. Jason Kidd played him at point guard some early in the season. That didn't go quite as well as they would have hoped. I mean, obviously, he's 19. He's not ready to be an NBA point guard, but they did learn some things out of that. He did that with Giannis Antetokounmpo as well in Milwaukee, and look where that took them. So if Jason Kidd's going to be the coach, I do think the offense is going to be built around Cooper Flagg, and if that's the case, Burries is an all-around player. It makes a ton of sense.
All right, number 10, Milwaukee Bucks. And the reporting this week is that, and this is from Shams at ESPN, that they are open for business, speaking of Antetokounmpo. Um, I'm just going to kick it back to you because I've got him taking Nate Ament here. He's a high upside combo forward. He measured out well. He's got really good size. Had an up and down year at Tennessee, but he's grown. He's got bigger. He's gotten stronger. He's an elite character kid. He's got really good touch and dexterity. He's just a little bit more of a long term stock. He's going to have to take some time. But if they move off onto Tecumpo, this is just a complete rebuild where you theoretically have time to give those youngsters. Am I off on that?
It depends on what the trade looks like. And so much of what the trade is going to look like is where Giannis wants to go. If he's open-minded and there's an open bidding war, you might see a situation where they trade him for 5 first-round picks or younger players. If he says, oh, the Knicks lose in the Eastern Conference Finals, I only want to go to the Knicks, I'm only going to re-sign with the Knicks, well, then you might end up taking Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges, and suddenly your youth movement doesn't look as promising. You have two guys who are in the primes of their careers. Same with the Celtics if it's a Jaylen Brown-centric trade. Without knowing what the roster looks like, it's a little difficult to predict fit. But I will say this is the sort of team that could take the longer term view because they have so few core young guys. I think Ryan Rollins is the only younger player on the team right now that I would look at and say he's going to be a starter there long term. AJ Green, potentially, they did sign him to an extension before the season, and the shooting is so valuable, but they are kind of a blank slate. We don't know what they're going to get for Giannis, so we don't know what their priorities are going to be. But if you look at Nate Ament and you say, we really like him 3 years from now, I'm pretty confident the next 3 years are not going to be all that bright for Milwaukee. So take the guy you think has the most upside.
And if you are going into a complete rebuild and maybe you're going to move off Miles Turner, who would presumably have a market as somebody who can protect the rim and stretch the floor, maybe someone like Aday Mara makes sense here. You get your rim protector and you start to build around a new iteration of youngsters. There are certainly a lot of dominoes that will be falling in the coming weeks and months in Milwaukee, but we're not done yet. We're going to break down the rest of the lottery as you see some of those Tennessee freshmen. We're coming back right here on the CBS Sports Network, and we're going to finish up our lottery mock draft with Sam Quinn. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Network, where we are breaking down my latest mock draft. I am in Chicago at the NBA Draft Combine, and I am joined by Sam Quinn. Sam, we are up to number 11. That is the Golden State Warriors, which will apparently continue to be coached by Steve Kerr, which means the style of play is probably going to be the same, which means I love the fit of Aday Mara there. The now 7'4" in shoes, big man after yesterday's measurements, gives you an elite rim protector who can learn from the defensive brilliance of Draymond Green, but simultaneously provide you a lob threat and a really good passer who can play out of the pinch post, play off the elbows, and all those dribble handoff actions. But tell me about the next iteration of this roster construction in Golden State.
Yeah, the Warriors have been looking for a vertical spacer forever. That's what compelled them to take James Wiseman number 2 overall. They've never quite found that player. Maybe it could be Mara, but there's also the chance that this pick could get traded. They've been linked to Giannis Antetokounmpo. They've been linked to Kawhi Leonard. I don't think anything besides Steph and Draymond is really locked in here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a pick that gets moved for a veteran, but I do like the fit. It's not just the lob threat. It's not just the size. Like you said, very good passer. What does Golden State do? They pass more than any other team in the NBA. So introducing him next to Draymond with Steph running around all his screens, I do think that could be a very, very nice fit.
Now, I have his teammate from Michigan, Yaxel Lundeborg, going next at 12 to OKC. Lundeborg is 6'9". I think it was a 7'3" wingspan yesterday. We know he's a big-time athlete. We know he's unselfish. We know he's a very good passer. 2 things he really addressed this year at Michigan. His ability to make spot-up threes. He made 37% from behind the arc. That was a notable improvement. And also just the perception of his overall maturity level, which was a question mark when he went through the draft process last year. This guy guarded point guards last year, so I think he fits Mark Daigneault's defensive system and scheme there in OKC. Sam, it just seems like the rich are going to get richer with the Thunder.
Yeah, this is the sort of pick that I think everybody would collectively groan at. Like, oh, great, the Thunder are getting another guy who can defend several positions and make threes. If his only defect is that he's 23 and maybe doesn't have the upside some of these other guys do, that's not a problem at all for the Thunder. They have all the star power they're going to need. They just need somebody who can come in and contribute. They're going to have some tax and apron issues this offseason. Lou Dort on a team option. I'm not sure he's going to be back. Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, even Isaiah Hartenstein as a team option. I would think he's going to be back, but the bench, the depth is going to look different next year. If Yaxel at 23 can come in and play right away, that's a godsend for the Thunder.
At 13, I've got the Heat taking LeBaron Philon, who I think has a chance to be an offensive engine. The reason why I did that, in large part, was because of the uncertainty facing the Heat backcourt. Could you expand a little bit on some of the decisions that Pat Riley and company have to make this offseason?
Yeah, Tyler Hero was extension eligible last offseason. They didn't re-sign him. They traded for Norm Powell on an expiring contract. He's an unrestricted free agent. They couldn't play those two guys together defensively. They both made all-star teams in the last 2 years, but they were just so small and so vulnerable together defensively, they couldn't put them on the floor at the same time. So you do look at the Heat as a possible big game hunter. They're going to try for Giannis. They might try for Kawhi. But if they're making the pick here, you are looking for somebody that you hope has primary ball handler upside, because they don't have that at the moment. They changed their playing style. They're running this Noah LaRoche offense. It's a lot more drive and kick, a lot less pick and roll. So if Philon can fill in there, maybe be a potential for Powell and or Hero long term.
And the last pick in the lottery, I'm going to pivot. I had Koa Pete going as the 14th pick. That is a pick that is being made by the Charlotte Hornets. I still think they could look for someone at the 4 position, but just based on what I'm seeing in Chicago right now, based on what I'm hearing, I think someone like Morris Johnson actually has a chance to sneak up into that. Koa, who you're looking at, did not have a great performance yesterday at the combine. We're going to have more on this in CBS Sports HQ yesterday, but later today. But Sam, am I correct in assuming that positionally that 4 spot could be a priority for Charlotte?
Yeah, I'd say 4 or 5. They're locked in with LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Con Knipple 1 through 3. They're going to want athleticism and defense. Miles Bridges fit so well there last year because he was so athletic that LaMelo could just throw him all these lobs with this perfect spacing, and you get a bunch of big dunks every game. They're looking for defense. They were the best offense in the NBA after January 1st. I don't know if they're necessarily locked into a position. The only real perimeter defender they have right now is Sion James, who they drafted last year. I think any sort of size defense front court is broadly what they're going to be looking at.
All right, Sam Quinn, you are a absolute expert in the NBA. We appreciate you joining us here. We hope to have you back before this draft takes place. Everybody don't go anywhere. I've got one final take coming up right here on the CBS Sports Network. You are looking at the city of Chicago right behind me, or at least the hotel room. And that is the mock draft that we had slotted Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon as soon as that lottery became set. Now, I will tell you, here in Chicago at the NBA Draft Combine, there are already some whispers of movement. And the player to help himself the most on day one was Michigan's Morris Johnson Jr. Now, they didn't really play yesterday. They went through combine testing. They went through measurements, and this guy measured at 6'9" without shoes on. So functionally 6'10" from a basketball perspective, with a 7'3.5" wingspan at 251 pounds. So he is bigger than expected. He's longer than expected. And we knew he was strong with an NBA body. On top of that, he showed well in the shooting drills, reinforcing some of that growth we saw as a potential floor spacer this year. This is already someone who's known as rugged, who's versatile defensively, who played a very important role for Michigan, showing he was willing to buy into a role. Didn't have to be the focal point, helping them to win a national championship. I think now, coming out of this combine, given the amount of buzz that is already being that he already has just based on yesterday's combine, that it is possible we start to hear his name in the late lottery. And I know this is maybe a little bittersweet for Michigan fans. They were hoping to get him back. I just don't see that happening anymore. We've got lots more combine coverage coming over at cbssports.com, as well as on the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. You can check us out there all week long. And we will see you again next Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time right here on the CBS Sports Network.